Hi, welcome to Season 4 of Product Ops Podcast with me, Jirisha Nadaraju. This season, I'm joined by a special co-host and prior Season 1 guest, Dr. Kevin Sakamoto. Each week, we'll be chatting to Product Ops practitioners, consultants, and thought leaders about how they make their value visible. Listen in for practical tips on how to drive real organizational impact with Product Ops. Diana, welcome to Season 4 of Product Ops Podcast. I am very excited to have you on today. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Super happy to be here. Thank you so much. Excited about the topic.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to digging into it with you. I guess before we get started and get into the meaty bits of what we're going to discuss, it would be great if you could maybe just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey into product ops and what brought you to your current role.
Absolutely. I'll start by sharing that I'm actually in Montreal, Canada, and it's Formula One weekend.
Do you know that I am a huge Formula One fan?
I think I heard it somewhere.
Yeah, and I actually launched a Formula One podcast this year, so that's really funny. Are you into Formula One?
I am, yes. I mean, probably not as much as you, it sounds like, but definitely a fan. Even before the Netflix show made it popular, by the
Yeah.
way.
Same also. That's amazing. Okay, so it's race weekend
It's race
in
weekend.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm actually originally from Colombia, South America. Yeah, I carry that as a badge of honor. I bring my Latinidad everywhere that I go. And my career, my trajectory in tech actually started when the company that I was working for, it was a Montreal-based luxury travel company, was acquired by Airbnb. And we quickly needed to productize our entire guest and host experience. And so I had been with the business at the time for 4 years. I knew both sides of the business really well, both the host experience and the guest experience. And so I partnered with a few Airbnb project managers to bring this evolution to life, this transformation to life. And that's when I learned all about what product the life cycle was, what software development process looks like. And I haven't looked back since then. And in 2021, I was contacted by an SF-based company to join as their senior product operations manager. At the time, I had never heard about this thing. And so I quickly did my research, and there was very few voices in the community back then. You were one of them, alongside Christine,
Yeah.
alongside Melissa and Denise. And it's great because I thought these are all powerhouse women in tech that I definitely can see myself and have as an example. And then, of course, I read the job description. I really understood the value that product operations could drive for an organization that was scaling, that was creating very complex product. And I took a leap of faith on myself, and I took a leap of faith and I joined this incredible company called AppDirect. And it was at the time, product operations was a part-time job for all of the directors of product management. So when I joined, it was centralized under one role, one person, and it was incredible. And then fast forward, Ascent, where I am now, was looking for a director of product operations. One of the things that I had been missing at AppDirect was people leadership. And that was what Ascent was offering. Not only that product operations was reporting to the CPO and was also there to enable engineering, but that I was going to be able to become a people manager again and coach and mentor. And so that's where I am now. And I absolutely love what I do. It's been 4 years that I've been in product operations.
That's amazing. Really, really interesting. So your first role in product ops was something where someone approached you and sort of gave you this sort of job description. It wasn't something that you fell into but there was a JD, there was something there, but it just wasn't something you'd done before.
Exactly. It aligned really well with what I had been doing at Airbnb
Mm.
and where my natural skill set lies. So, I mean, it's not an easy job, absolutely
Yeah.
not, but it was incredible to be able to work cross-functionally. So, not just with an amazing team of product managers, but also
Mhm.
with the designers and with the engineering team. And customer success was one of my biggest partners when I was product operations the first time. And I loved that because I understood their needs and their pain very intimately. I had come from customer success as well. So
Oh,
it was,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to take too much time, but I'm so curious about all these things. As someone who's also done product ops this is my third time doing it now in a different company, Diana, and I know you mentioned now you were doing it at one place, now you've done it at Ascent, you're doing it there. How does it feel going around your sort of second time doing it?
Great question. So it's a different situation. So it's funny, I was talking about this last night at a product tank event.
Oh wow.
The company that I worked for, AppDirect, the one that
Mm.
introduced me to product operations, they worked in the very traditional model where the product manager is really the decision maker.
Mm.
Here at Ascent, we have the empowered teams model
Mhm.
where you have the product trio closely collaborating. And that informs how the teams communicate and collaborate. And
Mm.
it affects exactly how product operations can contribute towards that support and enablement.
Interesting.
Yes. So very different experiences, not just the product and the leadership style, but again, how, the operating model.
Mm.
I'm not sure I have a preference. I can see that, when there was a little bit more centralized decision making, we moved faster.
I see. Okay. It
Yeah.
is.
So I know
Yeah.
there's a lot to unpack there.
No, that's a whole nother episode. So, but I hear you. I think I'll just give one more comment on that from my side. I have found that definitely I made so many mistakes and assumptions when I was doing product ops initially, and now I've been able to maybe address some of those. But the other thing I found with working in different types of organizations and doing product ops is that you often are seeing similar problems, but yeah, exactly the way you're going to approach them is highly dependent on the context of how that company is operating. And so you almost have to kind of adjust the way that you're going to tackle the problems given the landscape that you're in. And that makes it interesting and also very challenging.
Absolutely. I will say, if I take a look of my roadmap
Yeah.
in my previous company and the roadmap in my current company, as far as product operations roadmap,
Mm.
very, very similar puzzles that we're solving for.
Yeah.
So, and very similar approaches. But it is just interesting to note that how the teams operate.
Yeah.
Deanna, one thing you mentioned in your extensive experience too is the importance of identity. And I love what you said earlier about back in 2021, looking and you saw that there are strong female leaders in the product ops space. We also noticed you're part of a Latino organization as well. And I wanted to sort of give a little bit of space for you to recognize that because you spoke eloquently about your product ops career, but also this organization that you're a part of is a part of who you are as well, right?
Yes, thank you so much, Kevin, for bringing us back to that. It's a very big part of what I do and who I am. So I actually co-founded this organization. Yeah, and this past week we got confirmation from the government of Canada, and we are officially a nonprofit organization. So we do have officially nonprofit status. Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about the organization. It's called Somos, Latinx in tech. So Somos is the Spanish word of we. So we.
Mm.
And then Latinx, the X makes it gender neutral because we want to be inclusive. So yeah, so we're a community-based organization. We're committed to supporting Latinx professionals thrive in tech. Not just thrive in tech, but enter tech. We work with a lot of student groups, usually like Hispanic or Latinx student-led groups in universities, or immigrants who have just arrived to Canada, were professionals in their home country, and there's a lot of barriers to be able to practice their subject matter expertise. They either have to validate their education or they have to gain a specific amount of experience, Canadian experience, before they can reach the level that they had in their home country. And then we also have a lot of individuals like myself who were well into their career and wanted to pivot into tech and just didn't know what that meant. So that's what we're here for. So we host events and program encouraging learning, networking and connection, and just support because it can be very isolating.
Hmm. That's fascinating because there's a corollary, I think, to product operations, in the sense of this togetherness that you're bringing the sense of togetherness in your nonprofit, and there's also that what you do as product operations. And it can be very isolating as well. And I think we'll double click into that later in the interview today. But given that you've been both now in two worlds, right, in this nonprofit world and in tech world, and you've been in product ops for a long time now, would love to get your take on how things have changed in the sense of when things are good, organizations will hire and promote and really spotlight product operations. And when things start to go a little not so good, product operations can be one of the first roles, to be cut. So I want to ask you a somewhat spicy question as whether or not you think product operations is a temporary role or is it something that should be here to stay?
So, excellent question. And it's interesting that you're making the connection between those two worlds because I hadn't thought about it, but as you were speaking, there is a strong correlation. So, it's about making our work visible, making sure that we are advocating for ourselves, making sure that we are connected to the business, making sure that we're working on the right things. I could be speaking both about us as immigrants, Latinos, trying to incorporate ourselves into the Canadian workforce or any immigrant into the new country they're in, or also product operations. We need to make our work visible. We need to make sure we're connected into the business. So, yes, I think I answered it in the first part. It's really important that we have a careful pulse on the business. One of the successes that I've had is making sure that I establish very close relationship, a partnership with cross-functional leaders. I need to understand, hey, what's going on in the customer success world? Hey, what's going on in the sales organization, professional services, etc. Oftentimes, I can help those leaders solve their pain and their puzzle or meet their needs through the work that product operations can do. And so it's incredibly important that we're our own biggest advocates and champions. We don't often get the spotlight to your points when things are not going well. And we are often seen as a nice to have, not a must have. I believe that if you're careful about how you structure your team and you're thoughtful about the work that you choose to do, then it is a role that will become a must-have and it is here to stay.
Oh, I love everything that you just said there, Diana. It resonates so much. And just what you said about it's about making the work visible. That is, in a way, I've changed the word work for value because I think it even goes a step further with us in product ops. It's not just even showing the work. We have to highlight what's the value. And that is kind of the theme for this season of the podcast is to get in people like yourself who have been doing this for a while and kind of highlight what do you do in organizations to really drive impact and create value and make that value visible. Because like you said, we often do things that go unnoticed. And unfortunately, we also need to in a way, sometimes justify our existence, which is a really hard thing. But now that Kevin has brought in this, not metaphor, but has, as somebody also from a background that is, not British, South African, and of Indian heritage, I think there's also this theme of you do feel like you've almost got to work extra hard and show and sort of prove yourself to have your place in the world. And it's so interesting how that feels a bit like product ops too. So that I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. Thanks, thanks for bringing that up, Kevin. But I guess to segue into the practical kind of application of product ops and what we want to get talking to you about, because I think it'll be helpful to listeners. Based on that sort of theme of making value visible, Deanna, we'd love to kind of hear from you on one main piece of work or an initiative that you or your team did that you felt generated this kind of value in your organization and you were able to advocate for it and get that visibility. So yeah, if you could share that with us, that would be great.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when I joined the company where I was before, one of my first mandates was to procure a product analytics tool. And I went through extensive, it was like 6-month exercise of selecting the top tools carefully, evaluating them. We actually did a POC for several of them that offered it. And I had to get internal buy-in and negotiation. We finally landed on a Pendo. And then my role was not just to select it, but also to implement it. And I saw how it was the cornerstone and a very critical piece of our product-led motion. In the company where I was before, in the tail end of my time there, they introduced a product-led motion, and everything led back to Pendo in many ways. And I thought, wow, this is an incredibly valuable tool. And I'm so happy that I took the time to implement it the way I did and enable the teams on it. So then when I joined Ascent, one of my first questions, I think I asked the question in the interview was, hey, do you have a product analytics tool and what is it? And then they couldn't really confirm. And so when I joined, I learned that in fact they had implemented Pendo, but the teams weren't really using it. And I thought, oh, what a missed opportunity for them, but what a great opportunity for me. And so then I quickly put together a project plan, and I treated it as a re-implementation, a reintroduction of the tool. And it wasn't just an implementation, because deploying the Pendo snippet into the code base, it's a one-day job. Let's say, I know it's a lot of work, but the magic is in enabling the team members on its value. It was training each team member and making sure they understood how it worked and how it could be used in their day-to-day. So we did sessions for engineering, for software developers. We did sessions for the design team. We did sessions for the product managers, of course. And then we went outside of the product and engineering organization and started showing customer success how they could use it, sales engineering in their demos, how they could use it, professional services, even leaders. And we have some leaders say, hey, can I see how some of my team members are using the product and learning the products? And absolutely. And so we made sure that they fell in love with the product, one, understood the value and how they could use it day to day. So my approach was, I selected one member of my team. I was very lucky. I joined Ascent and I had 6 team members, and one of them was a project manager, and she was an incredible project manager. And I said, this is your single responsibility. We're going to do this. And so I had a dedicated project manager. We created a very detailed project plan, and it was about 8 months of work, very specific milestones. And then we held weekly steering committees to track progress with engineering, with product management, and other participants, and also hold them accountable for the pieces that they were responsible for. And then, we also celebrated along the way, and we were creating dashboards. And it was at the same time that we were introducing specific product functionality that we were able to showcase, like, look at this dashboard. This is the moment that the first user ever clicked on this new feature. Let's celebrate. And so they had never been able to do that before. So I'm going to carry that into my career, And I recommend anybody who's in product operations to take ownership and champion your product analytics tool.
I was taking down so many notes as you were saying that. So, Tiana, this is such a relevant example. I can't believe you brought it, because it's one of the things I'm looking at in my current role in product ops. Also, I don't know if you started, I had some people already on my team when I joined who were existing people in the company. And like you mentioned this time around, they already had Pendo or had chosen it. So it wasn't going through that whole process of deciding which one to use. It was already there. And I think we're sort of at that point of, I'm thinking around, do we need to reintroduce and have this plan about how to make sure that people are actually using it or understand the value, and also how to scale it, right? Because at the moment, there's someone on my team who is taking on a lot of responsibilities with Pendo, but it is in the weeds, the nitty-gritty type stuff that really, if you've got your plan in place and how you're going to have everybody else pick this up, it's things that maybe product managers should be looking at, or the squad or the team should be looking at and engaging with. So first of all, great example. My one question to you before maybe I hand it over to Kevin, because I'm sure he has questions too, is that project plan. I almost want to double click on that, because I think that's the thing sometimes where we don't spend enough time just getting that right or putting some effort in to figure out how we're going to tackle this big thing and actually create the change. Because it doesn't happen overnight. And if you just try and do it like haphazardly, you'll never really get the impact that you actually want to have. So yeah, I'm just interested how you approach that with your team member, and how long did that take you to put together?
So the first time around when I did it, it took me a lot longer. By the time that was in the previous company, when I first even learned about Pendo, and then by the time I joined Ascent, I already had gone through the exercise once, so I knew really, really well what worked and what didn't work. And one of the things, there was two things I didn't mention before. The first one is that I made sure that the project manager and then one other person on the team who I knew was going to really be the trailblazer and the champion of in-app guidance, they became Pendo experts. They took every course available. I think we even invested budget into paying for some of the Pendo paid courses, and they have a great learning hub. And so that was also very important. The other one is that we treated each piece of the Pendo functionality as its own product release. So, for example, we have actually 3 products that we offer, and we implemented Pendo on each one because we needed to track usability of each one. Sorry, usage of each one. And so that meant, so let's say for the first one, it was the first milestone, it's like Pendo analytics on this product. And then the second release is like Pendo guidance on the product. And then it was like Pendo feedback on the product. And so then you had 3 releases there. And then same thing for the second product and same thing for the third product. So it worked for us. I assume that it can be also replicated in other types of like how product is it's built. But that had a lot of value because it helped us organize ourselves. It helped us time box ourselves. And it also helped us with the training content and making sure people were focused on that specific thing, because it can be very overwhelming to really open up all of Pendo and explore all of its functionality at the same time. You really want to make sure that you control the rollout and that that you don't create like an overload, a mental overload.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about the overwhelm, because with the tool, not just Pendo, but lots of different tools I've used in the past, there's often so much of capabilities in them. And as not the gatekeeper, but the person who's showing off this functionality or is trying to get teams to adopt, if you go out and show them absolutely everything and all the dashboards and all of it, it's just too much for someone to digest or and even if it's all valuable, like it's amazing that it can do all of these things, they're just not going to get it. And often the person closest to that product can sometimes then feel frustrated because they don't understand why people aren't picking up on how valuable it is. But actually, people have very limited attention spans and the ability to digest that stuff. So that's really important.
I did receive feedback from leadership very early on that said, please just keep control of the time that of like the product managers that you're taking away from their day to day to learn such a big tool. And so it was also in response to a request and feedback that I had gotten from our VP of product management at the time.
That's fantastic. I love this story. There's so much there to unpack. But one of the things I kept writing here is creating space for becoming. And what I mean by that is you've created space for the employees. You mentioned the project manager to just focus on that, for the other person to be an expert in Pendo. So you created that space for that to happen. And you also created space for individuals to really double click into the features that they love about Pendo and that they enjoy using. And I love what you said earlier about how you have Pendo analytics for the product, and then you have a separate release Pendo guidance on a product. So, right, you're creating this space for individuals to really learn and understand how Pendo can affect this product. I'm curious to know how you came up with that approach, or what informed you, what signals led you to take that approach as opposed to something a little bit more traditional, like a project management approach. And we're just going to release all this, and here's all this documentation. But you seemed very focused on making sure that the individuals consume, understand, and like you said, fall in love with the product.
Great question. It was inspired by what a lot of us hear in product operations, that product operations, it's PMing the PMing experience. And it's funny, I was chatting with my boss not too long ago, and I keep emphasizing, Pendo adoption. And I explained to her, it's like, we as a product organization are obsessed about our customers using our product. Well, I'm obsessed with the product and engineering and customer success team using Pendo, because I see Pendo as my own little internal product that I enable the organization with this thing. And so I wanted to take a very pragmatic product management approach to how I introduce the product to the users. So that's what inspired it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Yes, it does. And especially because there are there is no shortage of organizations out there that have software licenses that they purchased and they are just not using. It's sort of collecting dust, right? And there's this untapped value in that software and that product and the services. And it really takes someone to come in and not only champion that and to see how that sort of software can add value, but then the delivery method makes a difference as well. And I think that's where product operations is entirely unique in the sense that how you deliver value, how you bring people together makes an important difference.
Absolutely. I will add one more thing. It was actually a cost-cutting exercise in the sense that we had only procured, and this was before I joined, a piece of Pendo. I think it was just analytics. And we were paying separately for AHA. And I thought, well, everything that we do in AHA, which is also we weren't using incredibly well, we can do in Pendo if we expand the Pendo contract, and the cost for Pendo is much less. And all of a sudden, you have both qualitative and quantitative insights in one place. And so, the way I sold it back to the business, it's like we're actually able to save some money and improve the experience of my customer, the product manager, product designer, and engineer, because now we're bringing them all into this one experience. But again, all they heard is like, save money.
I love that you're touching on that, Diana, because that's something that's not spoken about enough. I think, especially in a role like product ops and when you are also part of leadership, because you do have to talk to your stakeholders and get buy-in. And part of that revolves around speaking to costs and looking at the costs of tooling and whatever it is. And how can you optimize and then being able to package that back to make sure that it still benefits the team. But you do need to be thinking about that.
Yes. And I have to say, this is where I need to exercise that muscle a little bit more.
Mm.
It actually was very isolating for me when I became a director. There is no training for first-time directors, and it's a big leap. The expectations for a director, especially when you're reporting to C-suite, it's immense. The C-suite doesn't have time to coach and mentor the way that, let's say, a VP would have for their directors. And of course, I'm not criticizing at all my current boss or my previous boss. No, they're excellent. I've learned so much. They bring me into the room, they allow me to listen, and I've learned so much. But I have to say, I've realized in the last 3 years, as I've been director, that there's a gap in my learning. There's a gap in my ability to, and it gets more narrow and narrow, of course, because I'm continuously learning and upskilling and reskilling. But being able to talk money or budget, sorry, that's the word I'm looking for,
Yeah.
doesn't come easy for me. I'm to the point where I'm exploring going back to university to get some sort of like certification on, hey, like managing a P&L and those things. Anyway, I thought it was important to mention that because we have talked about the experience of like the human experience in the technology world. And so I do want to mention that, but I do need to exercise that muscle more. I do need to, there's opportunities to do it. Again, it was in front of me, the opportunity of like, hey, let's just expand the Pendo contract. It's going to cost less if we just add one more functionality than having this whole other big, massive tool that is also a burden on other systems. But I think I'm leaving a lot of opportunity on the table in other areas that I'm just not aware of. I'm just not seeing, to be
Very
honest and
interesting.
candid.
The thing is, I could chat to you so much about this. I think we'll do another discussion, Diana. But I feel again resonates just so much because also first time director. I was a product ops lead, then a head of product ops, but then now a senior director of product ops. Also with a team of people and part of the leadership team, also making active decisions, trying to figure out strategy in all of those meetings and those rooms, questions about budget and all of these things. It is such a big step up, and I don't think people talk about that enough. Because I know product ops, but I think balancing that with your team, with the leadership, and it just puts this new sort of like dynamic in, and you've got this other thing that you've got to try and wrap your head around. And yeah, if you've done it, if it's your first time doing it, it can be a lot and it can be very draining. And I know we're going to touch on like personal stuff later on in the episode, but I think it's so refreshing of you to be so honest about that. And I love that you are also so self-aware about where maybe there are areas for you to improve in and what you want to do about it. That is the sign for me of an excellent leader. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. So thank you for your transparency there. And it requires this holistic level of self-awareness from the inside out as well as to your customers, as you mentioned as well. So I want to rewind the conversation back a little bit. And you mentioned how the product managers respond to certain features, how engineering responds to certain features, how customer success responds to certain features. And again, that awareness, you need to be aware of what they want, what they need. They're the customers. Just like how you mentioned earlier, what I need is I need to learn finance more, right? So that's self-awareness. So can you tell me a little bit more about sort of how you identified that need? Because those are three very different roles within the organization: customer service, engineering, product, and then what you did to facilitate that understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So we must, as product operations professionals, I mentioned this earlier, we have to establish excellent cross-functional partnerships. I meet with any director and above within product and engineering every 2 weeks, and likewise across the organization once a month. And I always start the conversations by saying, hey, what's top of mind for you? What are you working on? And I get, it's been time. So they often tell me like puzzles that they see coming that they haven't really spent a lot of time talking through. And so I'm privy to those, early thoughts and concerns and worries or excitement as well. And so that's how I stay on top of the needs of the various teams. When I joined the organization, I did a very intentional listening tour where I really wanted to understand, hey, what does a day in the life of an engineer look like? What does a day in the life of a product manager look like? And so on and so forth with other roles, including customer success and professional services. A fun fact, a professional services is one of our core users of the product. Customers purchase our software, but also purchase our managed services. And so our professional services team is the one that could give me the most valuable feedback about the product functionality itself. Anyway, so that's how I understood. And so then I identified some of their use cases. So for example, for customer success, they wanted the ability to be able to share back with their customer about how the customer's team members were using the product. Because again, they purchase our software to run programs, compliance, like supply chain, sustainability and compliance programs. And they couldn't do that before. And I'm like, well, we can help you. And so then we did the back end work. We created dashboards per customer that they could go in and learn and observe. And we taught them like, this is what it means. Like this is what engagement means. So we also had to go out and do a lot of like data literacy, like education, so that they didn't misinterpret what they were looking at. And so yeah, we were able to address their specific needs. And then same thing with engineering. Our engineering department loves the session replay functionality. And so it was first letting them know that we have the capability of doing this and then teaching them how to use it. So we did training sessions on like, what they were looking at on the screen. Pendo has this thing called rage clicks. And so that's kind of like the hooks, like, hey, you can see here, you can actually follow the cursor and like see where they like rage clicked. And so you make it fun as well. You have to make it fun. And then so on and so forth. So it was about listening, truly understanding their needs, and just imagining how this awesome tool could solve their problem or could help them to be better in their role, do better in their role.
Was it a case of getting immediate like validation or feedback or a sense that this was going to be valuable to them, Diana? Or did you feel like this was going to be quite a sort of change management kind of project, or, to change behavior? Or once you knew the problem and you were able to show them that it helped, did that automatically get you this buy-in and visibility?
When I joined, Pendo had already existed, but they weren't using it. I think they didn't understand the value. So I definitely had to advocate and champion it a lot.
Okay.
And how I did that was exactly by connecting the dots, mapping out use cases and inspiring them, making it fun as well. Being very targeted in our approach, very specific. I didn't want to just put a bunch of mixed roles into one room and then preach to them about this tool. No, I targeted their needs and I spent time and I made sure I made it fun and I spoke their language. But it wasn't so much as a change management, no, but I did have to get a lot of buy-in from all the leaders on making sure that it was time well spent for their team member to take time out of their day to learn about the tool and then to access it and then to use it and leverage it.
Interesting. And then how are you sort of measuring that this is having impact and value? Is there anything that's signaling this to you that is tangible that you can play back to leadership? I know you mentioned talking about adoption potentially with your manager or whoever it is, but yeah, what are you using to track that this is actually a good initiative?
Yeah, excellent question. So we were getting so many requests for various things related to Pendo. And so we set up a Jira service project where anybody across the organization could submit a request and our SLA is to respond back, not necessarily with the answer, but acknowledge the request like within a day. And we have almost a year now worth of data to show requests. And we're going through a revamp of that because it was kind of like a catch-all. And we've added structure to the project where it's like, okay, are you looking for a dashboard or a report? Are you looking for in-app guidance? Are you looking for, let's say you brought on 5 new customer success managers or, 5 new software developers and you want training for them, or you have this super big renewal coming up and you want to do a deep dive and include a lot of information in their EBR. So we've really started to organize like how the requests come in and establish SLAs for the various types of requests. And with that, we've been able to show the business this tool really pays for itself. The thing is that we also reached our monthly active usage. And I needed to double it, which meant, of course, increasing the cost. But I had the data to fall back and say, these are all the teams across the company that are using it. This is how they're using it. Look at the number of requests. Look how our team has been able to respond. It's worth it. It was I very quickly got a yes, go for it. Double your MAUs, increase the contract. Let's go.
That's fantastic. What I really enjoy about this conversation right now is just this dichotomy. You mentioned earlier about speaking to the same language as your customers, making sure that they have fun with that. But then here you are talking about the MAUs and that you've reached your limit. And now there's this very hard data, right? Here are the numbers, but then here's the usage. So there's this dichotomy at play here. And you make it just sound so easy about how you do all of this. So there must have been a challenge or two through this effort, and I'm very curious to know what some of the challenges were.
Absolutely. I hit a challenge very, very early on. It was one of our leaders on the engineering side, if I remember correctly. It was almost 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, where I don't think they understood exactly how Pendo works. It's a no-code solution, no-code, low-code solution. And at the time, there was a request for our engineering team to build a button, let's just simplify it, where a user could click and submit feedback. And it had just been sitting in the backlog for weeks and months. And I'm like, why are you doing that? No, we can build it up. We can build it in like an afternoon and launch it. And we can roll it out by segment, da 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 da. And it was just so easy. And so I remember getting a Slack message. It's like, we feel that product operations has stepped outside the scope and the bounds of their responsibility, and you are not supposed to build a product experience. It was something along those lines. And I'm like, no, let's get on the phone. Let me clarify. I actually freed up time for your software developers to work on other things. And also, they're working with us to design everything. We're not going at this alone. It is very much a collaboration with engineering and design and product management. It's now the product quattro. It's now the product. It's no longer the trio. Now it's 4 of us.
That's fantastic. So that relationship is solid now. It's grown over time.
Yes, absolutely. Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. It was just a matter of making sure they understood that we are not becoming software developers.
Right. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
That is, I do think you can get that with product ops, right? Because it is a role where you kind of come in sometimes in these sort of gray areas, in the gaps are you doing a bit of product work? Are you doing a bit of, I don't know, are you intersectional? And yeah, making sure people in a way don't feel threatened. I think it's more also just like a lack of understand. Like they can sometimes be a little bit skeptical about the role or a bit hesitant to be like, oh, what are you coming to do here with my area or you know, these different things. So I loved how you quickly, I guess in a way, shut that down by making sure you got on the phone, spoke to them, said, hey, it's all good. Like we're on the same team. We're gonna do this together. That kind of touches a little bit on like some of the skills you need to have, I think, as product ops dealing with projects and initiatives like this. And so linked to Kevin's question, Deanna, I'd also be interested in what are some of the skills that you think are key in driving an initiative like this to be a successful one? So if somebody, maybe like myself and my team, you know, we're probably going to be tackling something similar, or somebody else is picking something like this up, what do you think they should be keeping top of mind in terms of skill set or mindset?
Great question. When I'm hiring for product operations for my team, soft skills are the single most important because hard skills, you know, especially in an operations role, like I can go out and I can champion you and pay for you to go and take various courses and skill up on very technical areas. What's most important, and again, going back to the example I've discussed, you need to be able to communicate clearly the why and the what and get that buy-in. You need to be able to negotiate, you know, don't just say no or don't just say yes, you know, be able to negotiate because we do work with limited resources, both time and bodies. And so it's important, as well as attention to detail is incredibly important. I remember there was moments throughout the implementation of the different functionalities across our various products that if you did one thing here, it would affect something over here. And so being able to pick up on that and get ahead of any disasters was really, really important. And you needed that detail, that attention to detail to do it. Being able to communicate in front of a large audience is something also that I look for. I'm not talking about hundreds of people, but if you're able to go in front of the entire group of product managers and kind of hold your ground, stand your ground, you oftentimes in product operations say something that stirs up a lot of opinions and emotions, and being able to manage those emotions, not only within yourself, but with your audience, and be able to find that middle ground and make sure that your audience is understanding and you're able to get their buy-in. All of that, like how you show up is really, really important.
That's so true with product operations, especially with everything we discussed about this ambiguity of the role. And we discussed for almost an hour now about the importance of bringing value and that the delivery and the approach matters just as much as well. You spoke earlier about how it was lonely to be a director, and there's no training to get you to that role, especially when reporting to the C-suite. And Jadisha is a senior director. I formerly was a senior director as well, so I get it. It is very difficult, and yet you make it look so easy. So I'm curious to know, what do you think is the hardest part about product operations and the leadership role that no one is really talking about?
So the first podcast that I ever, or not, it wasn't a podcast, sorry. It was like a live webinar session. One of the first ones ever recorded. I had been in product ops for maybe 6 months. And I said something that at the time for me was like, ooh, that was controversial even for me, but it's very true even today, 4 years later. In product operations, what I said was, if you aren't upsetting somebody, you're not doing a good job. I used a different word. and I realized that the better my team does, the more impactful work my team does, the more I'm upsetting somebody for some reason. And it goes back to that example that I shared about the leader in engineering. It's like, why are you doing something within the products? Like, I'm actually freeing up time for your team member. And so the reason I bring that up is because we do, as product operations professionals, need to remember that our job is to come into an organization, observe, learn where there's opportunities for improvement, and fix those things. And it means telling other leaders, hey, something's wrong with something your team is doing or something you're doing. Of course, you use better words, but at the end of the day, that's what they're hearing. And so it's very difficult. It can be very draining to always have to be explaining the why and talking people off a ledge. And it's just a lot. It can be very overwhelming, it can be very taxing, it can be very emotional. And so one of the things that I did is I started talking more about the great things that they were already doing and that we want to preserve. And I'll try to make connections between, it's like, hey, you're doing this thing over here really, really great and cool and awesome. We had nothing to do with it. But what if we take some of those learnings and some of those approaches and do it over here with this thing that we want to do? And I mean, I remember, well, people just want to kind of be told that they're doing a good job and that they had a hand in building something awesome. And that's it.
I love that. I also just love what you just said, because I think that is something that maybe sometimes as product ops you can forget, because the part of this role in this job is to go straight to the problems. You are there, you are a fixer of problems, and the more problems you see, in a way, the better, because you know that you can roll up your sleeves and help with them. And so in communicating with people, it's so easy to just go straight to, oh, okay, so in your area, there are these problems and blah, 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 blah. And that approach means that, yeah, you're not, I wouldn't say stroking the ego, but in a way you are going straight to that, and you're not necessarily talking to the good things that that person in that area is also already doing, because you want to amplify the good, but sometimes there's also key problems that you just want to go into. And that's a great way of looking at it, Diana.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I would definitely recommend that every product ops professional start by talking about what's working before you start talking about what's not working.
I'm curious to know, like I'm reliving some of my product operations experiences as well, hearing you talk, and I'm wondering what you do personally to stay motivated and energized as you navigate this role.
Well, I get to talk about my experiences on moments like right now today. So thank you so much to both of you for all your questions, and Jerusha for inviting me to be part of your podcast. Thank you so much. And I do also refresh and I recharge by giving back to my community through the nonprofit organization. And just, yeah, just make sure that you're doing things to fill your cup, your happy cup. That can look very different. I was speaking with my team. We do a Friday mornings coffee chat, and two of them like to play golf, and they're like looking forward to like playing golf this weekend. I'm like, yes, go and recharge and do your thing. And I even actually encourage my team members, because I recognize that I'm at the leadership level, and my team members are often the ones out there on the battleground, and they get the brunt of it. And so I encourage them, like, if it's a beautiful day, it is a beautiful day in Montreal and Ottawa right now. Most of the team is located in Ottawa. Take the day off. You don't have to be sick to take a day off. If you want to just go take a nap by the water all day, do that. Don't wait till you're burned out or your battery's reaching the bottom to take a day off. No. So I preach that, I exercise that, and I encourage individuals to do that as well. Anybody.
That's great advice. I think that the managing the draining element of it and getting your holiday in or doing stuff before you get to that point is so important. And especially in a role like this, because I've noticed even myself, if I'm getting to the point where my cup is empty, it is very difficult to not hide your frustration with some of these problems that you're dealing with. And you are interacting with, in effect, your customers on a day-to-day basis. And if you're not, like you also, I loved how you mentioned about the emotions and managing your own stuff, because you're going to be confronted with so many people who may be saying, oh, why are you doing that? You have to be coming from like a calm, centered, filled cup or half filled cup place. And so, yeah, scheduling breaks ahead of time before that burnout point is so, so important. So I love that advice. Deanna, I know we're coming on time now, but I guess my last question to you, and maybe you've touched on it a little bit, is that you've been in product ops for a number of years now and in quite a senior position. I'm just curious about whether your view on product operations has changed from when you first started in this role, like kind of not knowing what it was, but thinking that it would be a good fit. Has it changed? And if so, how has your view on the function changed since then?
So, not really. I learned very quickly in my first role in product operations that product operations is an enabler of all the hands that go into building an awesome product. The majority of the initiatives that I was working on impacted engineering team, actually more so than the product managers. And so although product operations, I reported into the product management org, I spent more than 60% of my time with engineering team. And they were actually, when it came time to roll out some of the big changes that I was introducing, it was them they were my champions, and they were the ones literally like saying, hey, Diana from Product Ops is coming in to talk to us, and we co-created this, and et cetera, et cetera. And so every opportunity that I get to mention, it's like product operations is not just there to enable product managers to do great work. It's there to enable all the hands that go into building a great product. And I would extend that to say ensuring the product's success. I preach this at the product and engineering all hands every chance that I get. It's like, what is the point of adopting the best practices with the best tools to build an awesome product if we aren't enabling our users to use it, understand it, fall in love with it? There's no point. And so I think it's just really, really important that we keep in mind that product operations has a much bigger impact. We're enablers. I do mention though at one point, it's important that we keep a very centralized team, a small team, an agile team. We don't want to become bottlenecks. We just want to be force multipliers. So it hasn't really changed. I learned very quickly the impact.
I think that is a great way to end our discussion, with you sort of explaining the broader audience, that this goes beyond just the product manager, and also extends beyond just the internal company you're looking at, but also, how are we actually delivering value to customers, the end customers too. Diana, it's been so lovely having you here. I know Kevin and I have enjoyed this. I also know that Kevin is filled with way more questions that he wants to ask you and comments, and I felt the same throughout this. There were lots of things we wanted to double click on. But if anybody else wants to maybe get in touch with you to ask you about some of these things that you've mentioned, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, thank you again for joining us, Diana. It was great.
Thank you both so much. I enjoyed so much this conversation. If we want to do a part 2 and deep dive into anything else, count me in.
Yes. So I don't know if we do, but I think Kevin and I are already like, yes, let's do a part 2 and deep dive. That'd be so cool. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please remember to rate, follow, and subscribe to Product Ops Podcast across our channels, including Substack. Even better, share it with your friends and colleagues in Product Ops, as that helps others find it. Thanks, and take care.